It's less traffic, and I can easily pick up I-80. My action was prompted by my interpretation of the case, the Montgomery case, which grew out of the Whitehead case, where the city paid the legal fees. They were challenged by citizens, and of course it went to the Supreme Court. And I believe Chief Justice Talbot wrote the decision saying it was permissible because an indictment was no indication of guilt. You could be innocent as anyone can be, and yet could be financially ruined for performing a public duty. And I feel there needs to be some protection. And I'm glad it's before the court. Hopefully it can be adjudicated, or it could be addressed by the court.
How about
Message from the governor.
the House and Senate today overrode the governor's
Message from the governor, House representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, I
Federal
transmit
court
herewith a
ordered
message from the
reappraisal of
governor
property
concerning House
values.
Bill.
The Senate passed the bill early today. Lieutenant Governor George McMillan said he intended to hold a compromise textbook selection committee bill hostage until the governor acted on the reappraisal deferral bill. The governor's veto was based on the anticipated loss of property taxes, but the two houses overrode the veto, even though it was said the bill could in fact place the education budget in jeopardy of proration because of the effects of current use on further reducing taxes. And oddly enough, many legislators privately said they expected the federal court to throw out the bill, deferring reappraisal. Another bill that would have doubled the homestead exemption was apparently killed when the Senate attempted to end their half of the session before acting on the bill. The bill caused friction between the presiding officers of the two chambers. House Speaker Joe McCorkadale accused Lieutenant Governor George McMillan of refusing to accept the bill because of petty politics. But McMillan, after calling the bill up later in the day, denied the charge and fired back the Speaker was guilty of political bill handling in the past. The Senate refused to act on the bill and voted to end the session, but the House voted to return Monday, hoping to pressure senators into returning and passing the so-called McCorkadale tax relief bill. One bill that did pass today was the governor's textbook bill. After being held hostage during the reappraisal deferral debate, the Senate agreed with a compromise hammered out in the governor's office this morning between the House and Senate sides. The compromise would allow the governor to make all of the non-professional member appointments to the textbook committee, but requires the governor to take 2 recommendations from the state school superintendent and 2 from local school boards. Both the House and Senate took the green light on the compromise. Meanwhile, the state school superintendent, Dr. Wayne Teague, was downstairs waiting to see who would be chosen to take over his responsibilities overseeing 2-year colleges. The state school board, led by the governor, was looking at 9 candidates who would leave Teague with the job of overseeing just kindergarten through 12th grade, a lifting of responsibilities Teague said he was happy to see. The board met in closed executive session for nearly 3 hours before voting 6-3 to hire former acting University of Alabama president Howard Gundy as chancellor. The job carries a 2-year contract and a salary ranging as high as $65,000 a year. The salary will be negotiated with the governor. Gundy has been serving as the governor's advisor on higher education. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
National union leaders announced the bankruptcy by saying it's all over for PATCO, but the union's local president isn't so sure. C.J. Favre doesn't like the decision to fold, but holds to the union line. Still, he's ready to reorganize. Favre believes PATCO will be missed. Who else will watch the Federal Aviation Administration, he asks.
We were involved in all personnel policies that were developed. We were involved in procedural policies for working the traffic. We would file unsafe condition reports if there was an unsafe condition within the system.
The local union president doesn't think the FAA has done much to straighten out the safety problems PATCO complained about, but adds he can't be sure. He's an outsider now. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
gotta pay that online money. I can't pay it online.
I don't think you can do that.
Now, do you know at the time that Sheriff Hewlett
This was the match that had everybody talking. Billie Jean King in the far court against Chris Everett Lloyd. It was the first time in 62 years anyone as old as Ms. King had played in the semifinals at Wimbledon. No one expected her to win, but then no one expected her to get this far. So people whispered, maybe, just maybe. Ms. Lloyd momentarily quieted the rising sentiment by taking the first set 7-6 on a tiebreaker.
Game, Mrs. Lloyd.
In the second set, Ms. King in the near court dominated from start to finish, running all over the court to chase down balls. On this particular point, as Ms. Everett hit consecutive overhead smashes and ran her opponent from sideline to sideline, only to see the ball keep coming back, even she must have thought, just maybe. Ms. King won the second set 6-2, and people were applauding and now saying out loud, yes, she can. In the third set, middle age could not be denied. Ms. King was tiring and missing shots she had made earlier. When it was over, Chris Everett Lloyd had won the final set 6-3, but Ms. King had won the hearts of the fans. Martina Navratilova in the far court came to Wimbledon seated #1 in women's singles. She has now gone through the semifinals without anyone being able to seriously challenge that ranking. Today, Bettina Bunge could win only 4 games as Ms. Navratilova in a 6-2, 6-2 victory advanced to the finals where she will play Chris Everett Lloyd for the championship. John McEnroe, the #1 seeded men's player, was struggling with his game most of the afternoon. Johan Kriek in the near court won the first set 6-4. McEnroe finally found enough consistency to do what everyone thought he would, win the next 3 sets, 6-2, 7-5, 6-3, and advance to the semifinals. Earning the right to play McEnroe in the next round was unranked Tim Mayotte in the far court. Mayotte played a marathon 4-hour, 5-set match against Brian Teacher, winning 6-7, 7-6, 7-5, 3-6, 6-1.
The Freedom Singers know something we're singing about. Freedom is a flame that burns within you.
Freedom, 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 freedom. Freedom is a notion within the nation. Freedom is a body's imagination. Freedom is full-time occupation. States above.
The chance to stand up for America was enough to bring 6 young Montgomeryans together for all this high-stepping and harmonizing. It was enough to get WSFA Television and Maxwell Air Force Base to sponsor a real showstopper. Part music and part thought-provoker. Congressional Medal of Honor winner William Lawley and Alabama State Supreme Court Justice Janie Shores will be 2 featured speakers. Of course, the evening is mostly about pride.
America is standing proud. Proud is what we really all about. America, our pride is showing.
Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
Last year, 15 people died on Alabama's highways and interstates during the 4th of July holiday weekend. This year, state troopers are hoping for a lower number. So Corporal Gene Gravely and most other troopers in the state are working overtime this weekend, patrolling the state's roadways, trying to keep the number of fatalities down. It's all part of the federally funded Operation 21 program, which provides overtime pay to keep troopers on the roads during the 21 most hazardous driving days in the year. And Gravely says the troopers will also be doing something new this year, trying to bring traffic deaths closer to home by making sure people all over the state know when someone dies on the road.
Well, we're contacting all of the news media the minute a fatality happens anywhere in the state. We're trying to go statewide at this time. Let them know that people are dying unnecessarily on the highways, that they shouldn't have to shed their blood.
Gravely says the number one problem again this year will be drinking and driving. He says people sometimes get caught up in the holiday festivities and forget safety.
If we can get them to listen to whatever news media that they're listening to, and if they'll just stop and think that, hey, that's a human life, that could be someone in my family, that could be me, then maybe we would have a success with this.
Gravely says troopers will also be helping motorists all over the state when they have troubles on the road. Gravely says it may mean a lot of work for troopers, but if lives are saved, it'll all be worthwhile. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
In view of what has developed, if the court ruled that we were acting on legal premises, I would be content with if they're found, if they're not found guilty, then I would be willing to seek the payment of those fees from the county after the fact.
Navratilova has dominated women's play all year, and today she proved her #1 ranking, downing Everett Lloyd 6-1, 3-6, 6-2. Both players broke the other's serve frequently in the match, but the key break came in the third and deciding set. Trailing 2-3, Chris was leading 40-15, but Martina rallied to take the game.
Hit the service line, and she jumped all over it, forced the mistake.
Martina with a passing shot now has scored the break that could mean the championship.
That win gave Navratilova a 4-2 lead, and Lloyd never recovered. The win was Martina's third singles title at Wimbledon. She foiled Everett Lloyd's bid for a fourth.
She's going to win it just like that. Martina, a true champion. She fell apart and came back.
In men's play, top-seeded John McEnroe stormed into the finals with an easy 6-3, 6-1, 6-2 victory over outclassed and unseeded Tim Mayock.
McEnroe in straight sets, 6-3, 6-1, and 6-2.
McEnroe enters the finals for the third straight year. He will defend his title against second-seeded Jimmy Connors. Connors swept past 12th-seeded Mark Edmondson of Australia 6-4, 6-3, 6-1. Connors, the Wimbledon champ in 1974, will be making his 5th appearance in the singles finals. TV 12 will have the men's finals for you live tomorrow morning, beginning at 8 o'clock.
As he ground the combative Edo into the side.
The tradition of a Petty running a NASCAR Grand National race in a car owned by Petty Enterprises of Randleman, North Carolina, will come to an end on Sunday at the Daytona International Speedway in the Firecracker 400. Young Kyle Petty has signed to drive Hoss Ellington's Buick in the Independence Day event and will stay with that ride in all of the super speedway races. Kyle says the move's been thought about for some time.
We was kind of like getting tight on money at Petty Enterprise and stuff, and I mean, you know, it was the type of deal where Daddy needed to be winning races and I need to be winning races, and running 2 cars out of one shop, it was getting kind of tough on everybody. Everybody was getting wore down right quick, so we felt like to give everybody at the shop a break and to give us a break, we needed somewhere else to go.
Kyle is in no way through with Petty Enterprises. He will run the car number 42 on all the Grand National short track events.
When Ted Giannoulis created his chicken character for a San Diego radio station back in 1974, he had no way of knowing he would one day become baseball's most recognized fan. He was honored on his 8th birthday and given a 1,200-pound cake replica of Wrigley Field, later to be split up among several children's institutions. Giannoulis, now 27, makes more than 200 promotional trips a year and earns a good living from his brand of broad physical humor. In less than a half hour, the chicken sampled some beer, put a hex on Pirate pitcher Rick Rhoden, which resulted in a Cub base hit, warmed up the Chicago infielders between innings, shined up a bald man's head, and when Larry Boa killed a Cub rally by grounding out, the chicken collapsed in dismay. Giannoulis and his chicken have a host of imitators, none of whom have had a fraction of his success.
Any thoughts on your next 8 years? What are you after?
Probably a chick, you know, and probably want to build a nest egg and all that stuff. And one really important thing. Can you get me a date with the NBC Peacock?
Get out of here.
Barry Burnson for NBC News, Chicago.
The bus was commandeered at gunpoint by a husband and wife who forced the driver to take them to Jasper, Arkansas. The driver was released to tell authorities of the couple's demands. Keith and Kate Hagler said they would begin shooting the bus's 15 passengers if 2 demands were not met. The first was a television interview. And because they wanted authorities to kill them, the second demand was to have their bodies placed on land nearby, where they believed they would be resurrected in 3 days. When the news crew arrived, the pair released 7 hostages. Inside the bus, the couple said they were trying to call attention to their religion, called Foundation of Ubiquity.
It's a shame that it had to come to this, but we tried every effort that we knew to get it nationwide, our message across, and it just couldn't be done.
Following that interview, the final 8 hostages were released. State police had been ordered to wound but not kill the pair when they finally came out. After being hit by police bullets, Kate Hagler had shot her husband and turned the gun on herself. Both died within minutes. No one else was injured in the 4-hour-long ordeal. Jim Caldwell for NBC News, Jasper, Arkansas.
These people are part of Montgomery's heritage movement. They and the public have been asked to fast for 3 days until tomorrow night to call attention to the problems of violence and crime. The movement's founder, Bobby Jackson, looks for solutions not in political power, but in religious power.
Through the power of God. And I think there's no other way. We look at crime and violence as just plain sin. And the only way you can fight sin is through the Word of God.
And the way to attack sin, says Jackson, is to chase the devil away. Pray and fast. Jackson has been fasting for 7 days. He says it disciplines the spirit. One religious leader in the city, Reverend Coy Barker, feels the rally should remind people of America's godly concepts.
And so we feel that the 4th of July is a perfect time to ask people to return to God, to honor country, to honor our flag, have some pride once again in this old nation.
Jackson says the heritage movement tries to bring people together to exemplify Christianity and to perpetuate the things this country was founded on: liberty, justice, and freedom. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
President and Mrs. Reagan watched from the edge of the runway. So did more than 400,000 other people on a beautiful 4th of July. The landing worked like everything else on this 4th flight of the space shuttle, just as it was supposed to and right on time. The landing concluded the test phase of the shuttle program. From now on, all flights to space will be for government agencies or private companies, which have rented the cargo area on board. The secret military payload carried on this flight remained hidden behind the closed payload bay doors. Computers brought the shuttle down to an altitude of 2,500 feet. Then Commander T.K. Mattingly took the controls for a perfect touchdown. The Columbia landed on the concrete strip at Edwards Air Force Base, the first time it has touched down on a hard surface. NASA officials had hoped to land with a crosswind, but Mother Nature did not allow that.
Columbia, Houston, welcome back to Earth. That was beautiful.
The Reagans greeted Mattingly and pilot Henry Hartsfield as they emerged from the spacecraft. Then President Reagan delivered a speech. Many in the space program had hoped he would promise more money. Instead, he only promised in a general way to keep the space program going.
We must look aggressively to the future by demonstrating the potential of the shuttle and establishing a more permanent presence in space.
As the president was talking, the new shuttle, the Challenger, was flown overhead on the back of a 747 on its way to the Kennedy Space Center to be prepared for its first trip into space. Robert Bazell, NBC News, Edwards Air Force.
The 4th of July fell on a Sunday this year, and many people started their celebration of the day in church. More than one sermon was about God and country. The weather cooperated with the bright sun, a few lazy clouds, and a cool, light breeze. Some people took advantage of the weather for a little play in the park. or a little rest in the shade after a 4th of July picnic. Fireworks are illegal in Montgomery, but just north of the city, people were buying skyrockets, firecrackers, smoke bombs, and just about anything that would go off with a bang. The operator of this fireworks stand says sales are a little off this year.
People still buying, just certain items, but they ain't, in big quantities like they did.
There was, however, no shortage of customers south of town, where cars full of people lined up for a different sort of fireworks. Thousands of people gathered at Sandy Creek Campground for an all-day, old-fashioned 4th of July. The program was sponsored by WHHY Radio and Brodigan's nightclub in Montgomery. People came to barbecue, visit, and listen to a whole lot of music. This 4th of July marks the 206th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the birthday of the United States. And today, many people celebrated independence for the nation by showing a little independence of their own. Tonight, another large crowd is expected for a special salute to America at Maxwell Air Force Base. We Stand for America, sponsored by Maxwell and WSFA TV. The gates open at 6. The show starts at 7:30. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Pleasure for me to be back home.
Tied at 1-all, it had appeared Connors had blown his chance in the 3rd. Having trouble with his serve, 2 double faults allowed McEnroe to break service and tie the set at 5 games all. McEnroe then took the 3rd set with a 7-5 tiebreaker.
Game's all over, and for the 3rd set, 2 sets to 1, John McEnroe goes ahead.
But Connors would not be denied. He battled back in set 4 and won it with a tiebreaker.
Oh, Jimmy Connors with an ace when he needs it, his first of the match. This match, at the conclusion of the lingering death tiebreaker, is dead even.
The 5th and deciding set was settled when Connors took a 2-1 lead with an all-important service break, his 5th of the match.
Here's the winning return that might win the title for Connors. A long way to go yet. 2-1 for Connors on a break.
From there, Connors held service, and he took the match with this service winner.
Smoking Jim has the championship. You can give him an ace or not. I leave that up to you. Why not? The once and future king who came in here, James Scott Connors, has lifted the crown from John McEnroe. 6-4 in the 5th set.
Afterward, the champion was asked just how he won it.
What do you think was the single biggest reason you're standing here as the champion?
Well, I think probably 2 things. One, I improved my serve, and I stayed in there and gusted out. And I wasn't going to give up at any time, and that's just the way I played. I mean, I was just going to hang in there until death, and I probably died out there doing it, but I did it.
Jimmy Connors, the 1982 Wimbledon champion, with a 3-6, 6-3, 6-7, 7-6, 6-4 win over John McEnroe.
Congratulations from Sir Brian Burnett, and now
God and country. Not only should we remember country, but we should. At Superdome, Mississippi State's going to whoop them just like whooping a barred mule.
Country, and football.
You can say. I remember when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, my brother started crying, and he asked my mama, said, how'd I get to them? And he joined the Navy and left home. 6 months later, I joined the Navy. Before I was 19 years of age, I earned 3 battle stars in the Presidential Unit Citation for bravery. And I know what it took to keep this country free. And every 4th of July, I'm glad I'm free every day. But every 4th of July, I just get excited about being a free American. And by the way, my brother is a retired Navy commander, and he wears 16 battle stars. So it's great to be an American, especially on the 4th of July.
It's going to take a lot of research. I don't have all the answers to all the problems, but I think that one thing is coming in that you need to develop the state even further. I've been finding out the last few months that people are liking it, and I think the people in my district are smart enough to realize that you don't judge a person by their age. You judge them by their record, their potential that they have to serve the people. It would be ridiculous to say that I'm too young, just as it was ridiculous for many people who said that Ronald Reagan was too old to be president. So the people of my district, again, are smart enough to realize that you don't judge a person by their age. It's going to take a lot of research. I don't have all the answers to all the problems, but I think that when they look at this coming in, that you need to develop the state even further. You know, experience is fine, but if you've had the wrong type of experience and hadn't performed well, I don't think it'd be an asset to them. Everything that I've done the past 6 years has been aimed at running for the state legislature in 1982. And this has been something that I've always wanted to do, and here it is. And I'm going to give it my best shot.
Even though the lunar eclipse does not change day into night spectacularly like the solar eclipse, it does have its eerie attraction. Once superstitious military commanders and adventurers were influenced by the slow creep of the Earth's shadow across the moon's surface. And tonight, modern-day astronomy buffs will be particularly interested in the color and length of the latest lunar eclipse.
The moon will be passing almost right through the center of the Earth's shadow, through the very darkest part, and it will be in the part of its orbit where it's moving most slowly. So this will be a very long and possibly very dark eclipse. This combination of circumstances has not happened since 1859, and it won't happen again for the Washington area for another 45 years.
Moon buffs actually won't need a fancy telescope like the one here at the U.S. Naval Observatory to see the lunar eclipse, nor will they need any eye protection. They will be seeing the Earth's shadow on the moon and in varying colors from refracted light. Scientists say the ash from 3 recent volcanic eruptions may render the moon red before the sphere is darkened nearly completely at 2:38 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Should clear weather prevail, the eclipse should be visible in all of North America. If you're superstitious, you can go ahead and try to make an omen out of the darker moment to come, but others will simply view the eclipse as another one of the Creator's specials, with showtime beginning at 1:33 a.m. and ending a little after 5. Oh, and don't forget to stay tuned for sunrise.
Being a Christian, that you can just really kick your shoes off, relax, whatever, but it is fun. And I think that's important.
All right, what part do your other
Figures.
Figures.
Don't you call them dummies?
I don't want to say dummies. That sounds so amateurish. What part do they?
they more or less are attention getters. You know, the age spans there. I'm able to perform for the little ones and the older ones and still keep a good bit of attention, because when a puppet talks, it seems like everybody wants to listen. So I can make them say things, and I always use the correlation between the Lord being the great ventriloquist, you know, and without him, then we're just a bunch of dummies. Just like I make them talk, well, he speaks through us, and the same thing. So they give their little testimonies also, and it's a cute little thing. But the children really like that.
The North Hull Street Historic District welcomed a new addition today, a grocery store. The store joins many other restored buildings in the district, sponsored by the Montgomery Landmarks Foundation. Speaking to the grand opening crowd was Mayor E.B. Joseph, the mayor of Montgomery in 1900. Mayor Joseph was portrayed by his grandson, County Commissioner Bill Joseph. Mayor Joseph's speech contained a progress report on Montgomery at the turn of the century.
Last decade, the population of Montgomery has more than doubled. We are now, if you consider the near suburbs, a city of a population of over 50,000. 80 years old, 50,000 people. In the last year, we've had a 27% growth in the business in Montgomery. And we had 24 new concerns opening office, this being another one.
After the speech-making, Mayor Joseph and the wife of Montgomery Mayor Emory Palmer cut the ribbon, officially opening the store. Inside, visitors could find many items they might have seen in 1900, including children playing checkers on a barrel. Other buildings in the district were open and staffed with people playing roles from 82 years ago. And if you needed your pocket knife sharpened, chances were this gentleman could fix you up. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
And that was just super. Wednesday night, Dale Evans will be there, and tomorrow night, I believe, a vocalist, Edsel Bowen, will be there. He's super. So they've really, really got a great program planned for you, and looking forward to it.
All right, this is not something out of the norm for you, though. You've been appearing or taking your message into a lot of different churches.
I did a lot of church work. Of course, I was led of the Lord when I was 8 also, and as a little girl. And I've traveled to around 8 to 10 churches a month as Miss Alabama. I've done a lot of church work, and I love it. That's my favorite type. It's just, I believe that it's so important to really have a good time and show people that it's fun being a Christian, that you can just really kick your shoes off, relax, whatever, but it is fun.
The Homestead bill, engineered by House Speaker Joe McCorkadale, is a backup bill to one passed last week delaying the implementation of a federal court-ordered reappraisal of property values. The Homestead bill goes into effect only if the reappraisal delaying bill is struck down. And on the Senate floor, very few senators felt that the delaying bill would survive the court's likely ruling. But the Homestead bill almost died last week when the Senate tried to end the session before McCorkadale's bill on homestead exemptions was considered. That led to a political dogfight between McCorkadale and Senate President Lieutenant Governor George McMillan, each accusing the other of political maneuvering. The Homestead bill mandates the exemption be doubled from $2,000 to $4,000 at the state level and offers cities, counties, and local school districts the same option. Legislators say this is one of those bills almost impossible to argue against during an election year, but several senators went ahead and pointed out the bill could cost the state as much as $7 million in lost tax revenues and counties as much as $22 million, depending on how many choose the doubling option. But the ring of lost dollars at the state cash register may prevent counties and cities from having to worry about taking the option. Governor James has already indicated he'll veto any bill that could jeopardize what are described as very tight budgets. While the governor called the legislators into session hoping to reduce public retirement benefits, the legislators instead passed a bill delaying reappraisal, a backup bill doubling homestead exemptions, and a third bill, which if all else fails, mandates counties to reduce their property tax millage if reappraisal nets them more than a 15% increase in revenues. And that ends this special session of the legislature. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.